you really just have to automate like 80 to 90% of things
Mhm.
because there's really smart people who can help you deal with the other next 10%, right?
Are your JD Edwards users still bogged down by repetitive manual processes? What if there was a way to automate those clicks, eliminate tickets, and start making AI-powered decisions inside JDE today? In this episode of Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, I sit down with Mo Shujat to explore how to identify the best automation opportunities, qualify them for ROI, and unlock serious value using Orchestrator. Stick around. This one's going to change how you think about process automation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, the podcast where we explore real, practical ways to bring JD Edwards into the future. I'm your host, Nate Bushfield, and today I'm excited to be joined by Mo Shujat, VP of Advisory and Consulting Services at ERP Suites. How are you doing today, Mo?
Nate, I am doing really well. This is the thing I've been looking the most forward to today. So I'm really excited to talk to JD Edwards and orchestration and automation. Some really cool stuff with you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, you've been in this space for a long time. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I grew up here in Cincinnati, in a small suburb. Went to Miami University of Ohio, and right out of college, I got started working at a local company that does JD Edwards services, and got introduced to the JD Edwards world, and found myself absolutely in love with JD Edwards, the community, the software, and everything. I implemented JD Edwards for about 10 years. Got really blessed with the ability to, or the opportunity to do some net new implementations, do some upgrades. Got exposed to a lot of different projects across a lot of different industries, and just in a short span was able to get a deep breadth of knowledge on JD Edwards. I then actually left the JD Edwards world for a little bit and went to the tech startup world, where working for a company called Stored, where we were creating our own WMS and order management system. I eventually found myself missing and realizing how amazing JD Edwards is, and decided to make a boomerang back into JD Edwards. And that's when I came back to an old friend of mine, Mike Mormon, the owner of ERP Suites, and he was looking for somebody to help run their consulting practice, and I love JD Edwards and I love consulting, so here I am.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we missed you in this space. Obviously, you're a leader in so many different ways when it comes to JD Edwards, so it's great to have you here. But today we're going to be walking through your automation framework, and today we're going to be talking about your automation framework. We're going to be talking from identifying great use cases to qualifying them for ROI, and finally building orchestrations that drive real results. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's start with what people are feeling right now. Why do so many JD Edwards users feel stuck doing manual, repetitive tasks in 2025?
That's good. Well, it's because they're doing manual repetitive tasks in 2025, right? I mean, it's wild. We live in this world where we have, these users, right, who are used to this world of this new technology coming right from our phones, right into our pockets, right into our faces, where information is essentially being thrown at us, right? And then and it's all very, very automated. It's all built because of social media, because of the new app ecosystem. It's all built in a way where it's instantaneous, and it's meant to take the burden off the user so we can get content to the user faster, right? And that's the way the rest of the technological ecosystem is kind of working these days, right? And then you have these same people, and then they go to work, so then they browse their reels at night, and they get all this information. They become an expert on something through reels and TikTok at night, and then they go into work, and they're like, man, it takes me a lot of clicks to figure out important information about my business, and this really matters. This is how I pay my bills. This is how I pay my mortgage. This is how I feed my family, right?
Mhm.
And the frustration is so commonplace for users, because you're just like, hey, there's this other world I live in where information is literally thrown at me, and I actually have to filter it out. And then I come to work, and then there's this world where information isn't thrown at me, I have to go through all these extra steps and all this extra pain, and all this extra work to get the information that I need to be able to do my job correctly. And this dichotomy we live in is really, really frustrating to users. And I understand, I get it, right? I get it. And I think that hope is on the horizon because we have some really great tools now that make it so users don't have to live like that anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. But like a little bit more specific about businesses and about people, what type of signals can organizations look for that might indicate there's an automation opportunity in front of them?
What I always tell people is um, look for pain. Honestly, look for pain inside your organization, look for frustration, look for areas where you're feeling like you're lagging behind, even though all the signs kind of point to the fact that you shouldn't. So I'll give you an example, right? Right now I'm going through this really interesting upgrade with a customer, and they're on a much older release of JD Edwards, right? Much older release, right? They're gonna get to the new 9.2. And they walked me through this really interesting example today. And one of the frustrations the user pointed out, he said, it takes so many clicks for me to enter an item information in the item master. And he was walking through this process, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, man, I cannot wait to get this guy into 9.2 because I'm just going to orchestrate that for them. Like, we're literally going to create a spreadsheet and we're going to give him a button, and he's going to press a button. He's going to type it all in into one spreadsheet line. He's going to press a button, and it's going to automatically go in and enter all the data into JD Edwards, and it's going to make his life so much easier. And when I walked him through that, he was just like so excited, you know. And I think that's really what the important thing is that like we have to go seek out the pain where it is in users, where we're finding bottlenecks in our processes, where we're finding, things that are taking too long, and those are automation opportunities, right?
Mhm.
There's no substitute for like, some things just take time, right?
Right.
Coming from an SI, right, working as a provider or partner, we know that some things just take time. I cannot put 20 consultants on a project and make an implementation go by in 3 months. It's just not possible, right? It will just take the time that it sometimes takes. It will take sometimes a year. Um, and so what users need to do and what IT practitioners and leaders need to do is look through those areas in their business where is the opposite of that, where it's not just taking the time because it has to take the time, it's taking the time because your users are forced to take the time, right? These are manual data entry processes like entering in item masters, entering in bills of materials, entering in branches. What is your turnaround time for when somebody requests an item master record and then it gets created in the system? What is your turnaround time for when somebody requests a bill of material change for engineering change order and it gets added into the system? Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? What is the acceptable
Mhm.
standard for your business? And if that acceptable standard, if your gut feeling is telling you that, hey, 48 hours just seems like it's way too long, right? Go dig in, lean in, find out why that is, and I can guarantee you will find some optimization opportunities there. And if you need help, Onyx is here to help you find those optimization opportunities if you need them.
Yeah, that actually leads in perfectly to this next question. How can IT leaders engage with users to service these inefficiencies and bottlenecks in day-to-day processes?
Um, you know, it's funny. We don't live in this world of everyone's in offices anymore, right? Some people are still hybrid, some people are still fully return to office. Um, but in this ever-growing remote world that feels more connected yet disconnected at the same time, I think it's really important to form coalitions. I think IT leaders have to form deep coalitions and deep relationships with their business counterparts. Form committees, form an excellence committee, form a center of excellence within your users, right? make the case to see if you can get everybody in and a committee meeting once a month and bring in lunch for everybody and sit down and do a brainstorming opportunity on where you're going to do these things, right? Run a Kaizen event, you know? It's
Right.
it's these kinds of things that will, I think, set the IT leader of tomorrow apart from the IT leader of yesterday, because you have to form those coalitions with business leaders, right? um
Right.
there's always the two flip sides of the IT coin. One is the keep the lights on and the compliance side of things, where hey, we're making sure that all the things are running well and we're not incorporating too much risk. And then there's the other side of IT where they just do cool stuff, you know and that side of IT is the consultative side of IT. And I think IT leaders really need to embrace that side of IT. It's like, hey, how do we go out and find what kind of cool stuff we need to do for our businesses? Well, you go out and find that by really having and inspiring your business leaders to have the trust and faith in you and sharing those opportunities with you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like that's the basis of any business is building trust, building those relationships. That way you don't have these type of issues coming up as much as they typically do. But let's switch gears a little bit. So once we've collected potential automation use cases, how do we know which ones are actually worth pursuing?
There's no substitute for a good old ROI financial model, right? So sometimes you got to just put pen to paper and you got to build out a bit of a financial model. But there are some things that are just, you know, when it comes to automation, I think things tend to fall into a couple different buckets. One is this is a no-brainer, right? I'll give you my favorite no-brainer example. And I challenge my team with this all the time. And I feel like one day I'll get sick of saying it, but I'm probably never getting to say it. Why are users still running UBEs? Like, oh my God, give me a button. Why am I still going to data selection? Just give me a button. Let me highlight a row. Give me a button. Email me the PDF, right? Better yet, email me the PDF and attach it onto the order or the PO or whatever it is that I'm running it on, right? So, like, I think there's things like that. That's just like a no-brainer. Just do it. Like, if you have users running PO print, like R43 500, just put a button on the screen, right? Just like, this is a shout out challenge to all BAs who may be listening to this. Like, I guarantee you can probably go find 5 areas in your business where you can probably replace the data selection screen with a button, right?
Yeah.
Um, and if you can't, let us know. We'll help you find them, right? Um, there's there's that bucket which it's like a no-brainer. Then there's this bucket where like, hey, I know in my gut this is worth it, but this is a pretty big automation, so I have to really build out the financial model and the business case to do it. Um, my go-to with that is use your vendors. If your vendors can't build you an ROI, you got to go to your partners and use your partners. Have your partners build out the ROI with you, right? Get ideas, ask ideas for them and how they've seen other customers justify and do ROIs, right? You don't have to tell us all the information we don't need to know, but I bet you your partner can help you do that, right? Also on those use cases, it's best if you can form a coalition strong enough where it's not IT that's asking for automation. It's actually the business asking for
Mhm.
automation because IT has shown them how much automation is going to make their lives better, right? So that's middle bucket. And then there's the other bucket where, hey, sometimes the juice is not worth the squeeze. And on those buckets, be ruthless, right? Like if you
Mhm.
find automation opportunities where, hey, we just think that this juice is not worth the squeeze, be don't waste time pursuing that option, or spend a little time finding creatively how you can chip away at that and get the ROI out of some automation, not even if you don't have to automate the whole thing, right? So there's another
Right.
fallacy there where sometimes people just think that, hey, I have to automate everything. No, you really just have to automate like 80 to 90% of things
Mhm.
because there's really smart people who can help you deal with the other next 10%, right?
Yeah, you're completely right. I mean, There's so many people out there that can really change your business and even make a small little change that you'll see a butterfly effect throughout your entire company. So I completely agree with that. But what are some of the biggest pitfalls companies run into when they maybe try to automate a little bit too much?
Mm. Um, this is a great question. Uh, Sometimes with pitfalls with automation. So this takes me to this conversation I had today with a really bright young integration developer, an orchestration developer. And this is not somebody who came up through the JD Edwards road. He's learning JD Edwards now. He's a really smart guy. Had learned a ton about orchestrations. Has gotten really good at them, but isn't familiar with traditional JD Edwards development frameworks like UBE and business functions and overall kind of like the architecture of how it all works, right?
Right.
So one of the things he said to me was like, I know I can do this, but I'm not sure if I should be doing this, right? So, not to point his example, he did the right thing. Is he found somebody who he trusts, and he asked us questions on if he should be doing things, right? So first of all, one of the biggest ways to avoid the pitfall that I'm talking about is talk to someone, find a buddy, use the Learn JDE resources. JDE Tips is a great forum. I talk to people on there all the time. Post on LinkedIn. There's a big community there, right? Post on the Quest boards. Attend a SIG. Find a buddy, right? Find a buddy you can talk
Mhm.
to about JD Edwards. You can bounce ideas off, because a lot of the pitfalls that I see people get into is incomplete or sometimes not thoroughly thought out design and architecture. Orchestrations and automations are amazing, but if you design an orchestration incorrectly, or if you design it without the best thought out architecture, that automation can quickly become a major pain in your butt, right? Because it's
Yeah.
crashing all the time, things are getting stuck, orders are getting stuck in the system that they're coming from, and now people are complaining, right? So now it can start to become a really big pain in your butt. So having the right design and architecture of an automation that takes into account all the factors, your workflow, your users, the quality of your data, um, all that context, and starts to put together, okay, how does it need to be architected to be performant? How does it need to be architected to be redundant? How does it need to be architected to be communicative, right? Um, I had this really great in focus presentation I did for my learnings called characteristics of an integration, get an integration. Yeah, I'll see myself out. Um, and the point of it is that, integrations, great integrations, need to be communicative, they need to be scalable, they need to be timely, they need to be responsive, right? And you need to make sure that automations are the same way. They're doing all these things. A lot of times people are just like, oh, let me just automate, let me build something out there. And next thing you know, you didn't consider all those things in a design, and you've got a bigger problem on your hands. And that's, I think, one of the pitfalls that people need to watch out for. And then going back to my point of having a buddy, having someone you talk to, someone you trust, right? A friend, a mentor, a partner, someone you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing an orchestration that does this. Have you ever tried that before? Or can I show you on my screen? And can you give me some thoughts on how that works, or what you think about it? And that will help, because sometimes just bouncing your ideas of how you design the orchestration against somebody makes a huge difference.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that kind of that kind of thinking is more of a long-term strategic thought more than, oh, this is something that I need quick. Maybe this is a quick win, but once you start to build out a certain framework or certain automations, that can really just mess up your business and maybe even set you back instead of propelling you forward, which is what you're trying to do with all these automations. So completely understand that. But let's shift again. I know. I'm sorry. I keep making you shift after I feel like we're having great conversations about these stuff. but let's shift a little bit more to something really hands-on. From your session, it's clear that JD Edwards Orchestrator is way more than a nice to have, you know? It's an automation engine that can modernize entire business processes. Can you, I know you have, but can you walk through maybe a few real examples of high impact orchestrations that companies are using today?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Orchestrator honestly has been um, a game changer, and I was recently talking to somebody at Oracle and talking about the orchestrator, and even they said something to me like, I don't think anybody really realized just what exactly this thing had the potential of being. Um, and I think many of us feel that way, right? Like I remember when IoT Orchestrator came out in 9.1, at the tail end of 9.1. And you were like, what is this
Yeah.
IoT Orchestrator thing? I'm like, oh, it's just for IoT devices. And that's what it's going to be used for. And then it started becoming like in 9.2.3, it started becoming way more prominent. And you were like, okay, I can do some really cool stuff with this. And, when you hit like 9.2.4, 9.2.5, you were like, we are flying you know so I've got some I'm over the history of building this, I've got some customers that have built some really cool orchestration ones that we built for them, ones we built with them, um and ones that they've built themselves once you've taught them the framework and the landscape of how you build orchestrations, right? So I think some of my favorite ones, I'm trying to think back to like some of my favorite ones. This one orchestration I built, where it was really simple, but I loved the concept of it because you just think about it. This is back in like 2020, maybe, right? The concept of the intelligent enterprise was always there, but I don't think it had been realized, right? Not the way that we're starting to see it be realized now. But I had this customer, and we did this integration with the orchestrations with them, and um it wasn't what the orchestration did when it worked that was cool. That was pretty simple. It just picked up a file, it processed the file, and entered some data inside of JD Edwards and made users' lives very easy. What was, I think, really cool about it is when the integration broke and what it did. So what we did was we had essentially an exception path where if the integration broke and didn't work, instead it created a service desk ticket and it let IT know. And they could reprocess the integration transactions in the morning before the accounting people got in. And it was as if the error never happened. Right. And, I think back then we probably didn't realize how, you know, cool that was, because really that is the intelligent enterprise. If you think about it, it's like, I've got processes that run and problems that happen. And it's not that you need to avoid problems, because you'll always have problems, right? It's that when the problems happen, you have systems and automations in place that course correct without human involvement. And I think that's what was really cool for me. It was kind of like it was kind of like like a shift in mentality for me, right? Um, I think another cool orchestration we've done is, a customer kind of came to us and was like, "Hey, I'm being told you can't really enter a configured sales order through an orchestration." And for those of you who don't know me or do or haven't had the chance to, there's very few things in this world that get me just sort of jazzed up, like hearing you can't do this and orchestrator in the
It's
same
very
sentence. I'm
true.
like, let's go find out. Let's go prove it. Let's go
That's
prove it,
yeah.
right? Let's go ram our heads against this problem, this brick wall, and see how we can either get through it, jump above it, figure it out. So lo and behold, this customer says this to us, and we're like, all right, cool, let's go figure this out. And within, I think, a week and a half, we had a forklift, the standard JD Edwards forklift configurator,
Yeah.
sandbox data. We had a forklift order going into JD Edwards. After about 2 weeks, we figured out how to change out sorry, 2 weeks from the beginning, so another about half week, we figured out how to change the options. And then after about a month of plugging away at this, we actually started learning and building how do you actually make the whole thing dynamic. So if a configuration changes, like new segments and stuff get added, how do you actually make the whole thing adapt to changing configuration and segments? So it took a while,
Yeah.
but like I said, it was something that was interesting where a customer was like, "Hey, I don't think this is possible," and we were like, "Let's go figure it. Let's go prove it if it's not possible or not." So again, just
That's
another
awesome.
one where it was like a shift in mentality for me, where it was like, "Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of things that are possible with this tool."
Yeah, and honestly, knowing you, you took that as a challenge, and I'm sure that you worked your butt off to really get it across the finish line. So, honestly, I'm not surprised that I'm not surprised at all that you were able to accomplish it at all.
And like the
Um,
coolest thing, like the little moment of victory for me. So like we were banging our head against the wall, right? I had a functional consultant who was very technical, and I had a developer, and those two were just like banging their heads against. They were like, "Figure it out." They're like, "It's not working, Mo. It's not working." And I'm just like pushing them, like, "Yeah, you guys, come on, guys, we can figure it out. We can do it. Let's go. I know it's got to be possible, right? Like, let's go. Let's try this." I'm in the sessions. I'm working with them, and then all of a sudden, I do what I normally do when resources and technical people are frustrated, right? I say, "Hey, let's everyone just take a break. Let's all walk away for like
right.
30 minutes, an hour. Let's just walk away. Let's go hang out with our kids or play with our cats or go take a walk, go lift, go to your gym, go wherever. Just walk away for a little, right?" And that's what we did. We walked away. And of course I say that to people, but I never walk away. So
Yes.
now I'm banging at this and then, I take over and I'm developing it. And while my developer, my functional consultant are actually taking a bit of a break, I managed to figure it out. And then they came back and I'm just like, "Guys, I got it." I showed it to them and they were just like, I think they were
Like,
annoyed, first of all, by me because they were like, "Oh, of course it had to be him." Um, but I think more than that, they were just like, "Hell yeah, let's do this," right? Because they were so close. They were so close. They were like 99% of the way there.
yeah, and honestly, I'm sure that they love taking that break. Hell, there's a lot of data that suggests that if people walk away from a problem like that, they'll actually come up with new ideas and new ways to fix it and new ways to come about it. And you didn't even give them time to do that. You were like, "No, I got it, guys. Don't you worry." That's
Your
all.
your 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 boss will just figure out the 1% that you were missing and then come in and take all the glory from you. No, no, no. Those two are absolutely amazing. They did literally all the work, and we could not have done it
Awesome.
without them. Yeah.
That's awesome. But to bring up your session again, this I read this phrase and I started cracking up. The read my lips, no more data selection. That's so you, number one. That is so you. But how exactly does orchestration replace traditional UBE selection screens, and what does that do for end users?
You know, I've used that slide in at least four conferences. And I'm gonna say my George H.W. Bush impression is getting way better every time I deliver this. You know, um, no, so
Oh gosh.
I think there's like going back to what I was saying, like these automations they fall in these different buckets, right? And one of those buckets is this no brainer bucket where it's just worth it. And so I like to call these like these quality of life improvements. And I think they're so pervasive throughout the JD Edwards world. These are things that are so simple, we actually don't see them when they're right in front of our eyes, right? I'll give you an example. I had a consultant who created a row exit using a form extension for a customer, right? And this was the first time this consultant created a form extension, and they wanted to show me, and they were kind of like proud of their work, and you know and they did this whole thing, and they did, then it's a row exit, right? So it saved the user a click already, right? It already saved them a click because now we're adding a new row exit rather than the user having to go back out to the E1 page and click something else you know so the consultant shows this to me, and first, like, I'm looking at it, and then they're not seeing the excitement on my face, right? Because that's what
Yeah.
she was looking for. And I'm just like, well, I was like, why didn't you just open that up in a pop-up form rather than a new form so the user doesn't have to exit the current application? And immediately you could tell again, this is a recurring theme here. My consultants probably don't like working for me or working with me, right? But I think the recurring theme was just like, I hate that you thought of that, but that is an amazing idea because it just saves the user one additional click,
Mhm.
right? Anytime you move from one screen to the next screen, even if the data you're seeing is related, there's a focus switching cost that we don't
Mhm.
respect enough. And I think if you can use things like the pop-up form, and it doesn't work in every case, right? It works in some cases, but it doesn't work in every case. But when it does, it's a really elegant solution to just doing a small pop-up, having the user see the information they need, do the actions they need to, close the pop-up, and remain where they are. So to them, it doesn't feel like I went to a whole different screen, I went to a whole different application, I did all this stuff, right? So I think there's these very, you know, small, elegant quality of life improvements that have the potential for us to just really drastically improve the user experience in JD Edwards. And I think that's really where the whole read my lips, no data, no more data selection comes from. And I'll save my HW impression. Come see me at Blueprint if you want to see the impression. Um, is that it was always meant to be a challenge to my team, right? It was always meant to be a challenge to say, if you're upgrading or implementing JD Edwards for a customer, right? And it's meant to be a challenge to everyone, honestly. Where can you remove those things that are unnecessary? You know, and I think Orchestrator and the UDO framework gives us tools to make it so elegant, right? They take the system that users have described as, to me, people have said, "Oh, it's so clunky and it takes so many clicks and it's all these screens and I really don't like it." You know, to when you design something that's so elegant and the information is right there in front of the users, right? It really just changes the way they think about it, right? And we're trying to build this new generation of people who love JD Edwards as much as a lot of us did. And the only way I think we're going to do that is by showing them how we get to make this a very modern, very user experience focused system, right? And that's the whole premise behind that bit.
It's still one of my favorite bits. I know I know you use it a lot. Well, not a lot, but throughout time, I know you have used it. I'm sure we might even bring this up during AI week that I know we're putting on here soon at the end of April. So very excited about it. Can't wait. But if you're hearing this and you're thinking, we've got processes that need this yesterday, don't wait. Visit erpsuites.com or connect with Mo and the team. Get started with us. Whether it's a quick orchestration win or a roadmap towards AI readiness, they'll help you prioritize and deliver real value. But that's a wrap. Thank you again, Mo. Huge shout out to you. I know you have a busy schedule. I know it was a little bit hard for us to get onto this, but this this is a great episode of Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, share it with a colleague who's tired of clicking through data selection screens. Until next time, keep automating, keep modernizing, and keep pushing JDE forward. Catch you later.